Welcome to Carabelle as we continue our series of Christmas crafts. In today's episode, we are going to be making fabric Christmas trees, just like these. They are so adorable and very easy to make. And you only need a couple materials. And I'm going to show you the materials now. All right, the materials that you need for your Christmas tree is definitely the fabric. I have here some velvety fabric that I'm gonna be using for my Christmas trees. So soft. Then I need the base of the Christmas tree, which will be made out of cardboard. So I'm gonna be using this cardboard, this really big cereal box, and then this leftover IKEA cardboard, which is great. You can make really good things with this type of flat cardboard. You also need your scissors, ruler, hot glue, and some paper to trace your template. All right, let's get started. So I decided that I will make my Christmas tree about 15 inches tall, 11 inches tall, and 8 inches tall. Those will be my three sizes. So I would need to make a template. How do you make the template? Well, we start on a square base of a paper. So let's see over here. I'm gonna let you know that this is going to be the bigger one. It's going to be 14.5 inches. So I'm gonna start with doing a 14.5 by 14.5 paper. And then with your pencil, if you want, you can start tracing from one corner of your paper all the way to the other corner of your paper. And just trace little dots. For example, this is going to be 14.5. I'm going to start from my base on the side and I'm going to mark 14.5. And then I'm going to rotate my ruler right at the intersection of these dot right here at the corner. And then I'm just going to mark it on that square paper that you make and mark your length. And just go all around it like that. And then you are going to trace that mark all around because it's going to be making a curve. And that's how you make your base. Then grab your scissors and cut throughout that base, that cone base, and then you will have something that looks like this. And this is going to be your base. So I have again here 14.5 inches. That will be my radius for this. And then 11 inches and an 8-inch cone. So once you have this, the next step is to transfer your template into cardboard. So I have here my cardboard. I'm gonna lay it down on a surface for you to work on that you'll be able to trace your template on it. So I have my template right here. And then again, I'll just go on the edge of my cardboard, making sure it's straight enough. If it's not straight, don't worry about it. Just follow along your template. And then just trace it over. And here are some of the cardboards that I already traced and cut. So I'm going to be working with these cardboards for my Christmas trees. And then these are the cereal cardboard. That's going to be for the smaller one because it's going to help me bend it a little bit better. So the next step is to fold your cone, to make your cone for your Christmas vase. Because this cardboard is very thick, we need to think about how we're going to fold this. So I'm going to get a stronger ruler, kind of like this metal ruler, and I'm going to go over the middle and I'm going to press on my cardboard. Kind of make a little dent like that. And I'm just going to go around my cone to be able to create some of the dents for me to be easier to fold into a cone. See, it's starting to take some shape. You just slowly go around your cardboard to start folding. You can also use the edge of a table and press to help have a little bit more control on the shaping of your cardboard. All right. So you see how the shapes start to turn. You can see some creases in here, but it doesn't matter because this is going to be on the inside. Now you start folding and rolling your cone. That's how easy you can make Christmas trees. If you want more volume at the base, then I recommend that you glue right at 1/2 inch of the edge of your cone. If you want a slimmer tree, all you gotta do is just tuck in the cone, the edges of the cone a little bit more. For example, you want a really skinny tree like this, then this is how much you need to tuck in. If you want a bit more body type of Christmas tree, then you can let it out. And that's pretty much how I want it to be. You see what's the difference? This one has a wider base and this is a narrower base. And so there you go. I'm going to go ahead and glue this one, and then we will be ready to do the ruffles for the Christmas tree. To make the ruffle, you will need your favorite fabric or a Christmas fabric. In this case, I wanted to go with the velvety theme for my Christmas decoration, and this is kind of like a sage color, turquoise. And I cut the fabric. I think it is 54-inch fabric. Yes, it's a 54-inch fabric, wide, and I cut in 3 inches strips all across. And now I am ready to do my ruffles. Sorry. So I want to make sure I fold the seam allowance here, the edge. So I'm gonna go ahead with my hot glue and I'm just going to hot glue it here to have that not be visible in the Christmas tree. There you go. Just fold it on the wrong side. So for the ruffles, it really is depending on how you want it. Do you want the ruffles to be every inch, every 2 inch, every 3 inch? You want the ruffle folding to be 1/2 inch, 1 inch? It's really up to you, and you can, before you use your nice fabric, you can experiment with paper and see which one is going to look better for your Christmas tree. For me, I actually have two options. I have the ruffles that went, it's 1 inch deep and 3 inches apart. So every 3 inches, I fold my ruffle and make it 1 inch wide. So I'm gonna do 2 inches of space, and on my third inch, I will put 1 inch of glue only on the tip. You don't need to put the whole entire thing of glue. Only on the tip. There you go. I think that's gonna be much better. So then I count 2 inches on the third inch. I'm going to put 1 inch of hot glue. I'm gonna fold my fabric. And that's how my ruffle will look like. So this is the 2 inches apart. Every 3 inches will be your glue. And then I have actually every 2 inch apart, 1/2 inch of glue. So once we have our ruffles made, the next step is just to glue the back. You see how the back is very loose. So all you need to do is pick a direction. Do you want it to go to the left side, or do you want it to go to the right side? So this one falls on the right side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my hot glue and glue the tip of where I previously glue it, and then just glue that top edge like that. And this is going to make sure that my ruffles don't move when I adhere it to the cone, and all of them will be very uniform. And now it doesn't move. And now this is my ruffle. All right, so let's start with a small cone, the smaller one. And I have here my every 1/2 inch or every 2 inches, 1/2 inch of ruffle. And what I want to do first is to start at the base of my cone and work your way up. And we're going to go around the cone and see where we need to cut the ruffle. Make sure that you leave maybe 1/4 inch in space. So I need to bring this a little bit down the fabric, 1/4 inch, so it will cover the base of my cone. So since this is 3 inch, another thing you can do is, since it's 3 inches long, what you can do is measure 1/4 inch and let's do 1/4 inch lower than that. So instead of 3 inches, it will just be 2.75. And I'm just gonna go and trace that across my cone, or you can eyeball it, which is gonna be faster. But if you really want to cover this really well, making sure that it's even, I recommend that your base would be all at the same size. So this is going to help me be a guide for my ruffles. Okay. One more. There we go. So this is going to be my guide. So you can see I have marked the distance of 275. So it could be a quarter of an inch away from the edge of the cone. All right. So the next step is look at where your fabric is. I want to start from the edge, the middle of the cone where you put the two pieces together to form it, and I'm just gonna measure. You see, that's perfect. It's not gonna be too much in the bottom or too little, so that's a good amount. So I'm going to glue this part right there. So I'm gonna have my hot glue. Let's start gluing my ribbon. All right. And every so often you can put a little dot right here and glue it, or you could just go around and then see where you can cut your ribbon. For example, this one, I can cut it right here, and that would flush seamlessly with this edge. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. Now do it. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to go right there. There you go. So now that I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and just continue to glue on that base. There we go. Now we came to the end of the ribbon, and then I'm just gonna put some glue along here to seal it. And you need to overlap it a little bit. Well, this is your first layer. And if you don't like it to be open like this, just hot glue it into place. There we go. How does that look? Okay, now we're going to move on to the second layer. Now here we have the edge that we have cut. What we can do is we fold it on the wrong side. And this is the folded edge that we're going to place right there. So now we can have some glue. Now we have one more layer to do, the tip. So for the tip, it's going to be a little bit tricky, but it's not too bad. So that would be, so 3 inches from the top and you have about 1/4 of an inch left to cover this part. I'm gonna make a big enough circle and see if that's how that's gonna look. Okay, so I have my fabric here, and to make a circle out of it, I have this lid, and it's actually 6 inches. If you want to double check, just get a ruler, and yep, a little bit more than 6 inches. It's gonna be good for this. And the reason why I do 6 inches is because 3 inches needs to go down and 3 inches need to go on the other side. So let's see, 3 inches, and I have just enough to cover that ruffle right there, the beginning of this ruffle edge. So now let's see how that's gonna look. I'm gonna fold this in half just to kind of have a reference point. There we go. It's gonna go like this. There you go. Now we can add the embellishments with different beads, or I don't know, different things that you probably have that you can add to embellish your Christmas tree. I have these silver beads that I can use. You can start at the top, and I'm gonna put it on each pleat. I'm gonna put a bead, just like that, and it makes it so much better. Let's do a recap on our fabric Christmas trees, and I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of tips to make sure that your Christmas trees look fabulous. Let's start with the cone. So here's the cone, and we talked about that you can just shape the cone to make sure that you have your Christmas tree like this. Tip number one is to know how wide you want the base of your Christmas tree to be. If you want wide enough, you can glue the cone at 1/2 inch. If you want a narrow, tall Christmas tree, you just need to take in a little bit more. Just take in all the way. If you want it to be very, very narrow and tall, up to half of the size of the cone if you want, or you can do even more than that. So once you decide how wide the base of your cone will be, then just go ahead and glue it. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to mark the levels of where you're going to place the ruffles on your Christmas cone, and this is going to be a guide for gluing the ruffles evenly. So it's a really good way of knowing where you are going to glue and then when the next layer will start. The third tip is actually the ruffles on the cone. So we want to make sure that we leave enough space between the base and the ruffle so the ruffle can cover the base of the cone. Not too much, because otherwise your base is going to look like this and it can crinkle. And if you want that look, that's okay, but just enough. Usually about 1/4 inch will make it, or even up to 1/2 inch. It just really depends width of your base. So the wider the base, probably the more that you need to give in. The narrower the base, the less that you need to give in, because the measurement changes. That's the second tip. The third tip is that when I mark on my cone, I make sure that the bottom is 1/4 inch. That works for me with my measurements, um, outside of the base. So basically, I'm going to start at 2.75 inches. And then I'm going to move up to my second layer, and that actually would be to cover 1/2 inch on top of the edge, the top edge of my bottom ruffle. So I'm going to, instead of doing 3 inches from the guide for my next layer, I'm going to do 2.5 inches, and then so forth, 2.5 inches until I reach the top. And then if the top is longer or shorter than the bottom, then you can decide whether you want to cover the whole thing or do another layer if you have enough. So that is tip number 3. Tip number 4 is actually focusing on the tip of the cone. So for here, my cone, the tip of this cone is actually 3 inches tall if we count it from the last guideline of my layer. But it needs to be 3.5 inches because I need 1/2 inch at the bottom to cover, to be on top of the layer that is in here. So you don't have to see the seam of the ruffles. So that means I need to have some fabric that is 3.5 inches long from the tip to cover the on top of my previous layer, and whether I want the top to be bulky or slim. So for that, I usually make a circle based on the length of my tip of the cone. So the length of this actually will be multiplied by 2, so it can give me the diameter of my circle. So that will be 7 inches. Once I have cut the fabric in a circle, then I can use the whole circle to place it in here, and then I can fold each piece of fabric to make ruffles at the top, and it will look something like this. So in here I put a whole circle on top of the tip, and then I made little ruffles. I kind of just went like this to make ruffles, and then I hot glue it. This turned out to be okay because the previous layers actually are bulky. Now, if they weren't as bulky, then this is going to be too bulky at the top. So, and that kind of, it's going to look kind of funky. So if you don't have that many layers previously, then you want the tip of your Christmas strip to be slim. So for that to happen, you can cut your circle in half, and just after you did the last layer of ruffles, you just glue and go around it like this. It could be a little bit loose, or you can glue it all together. I would like to have it a little bit loose because then it will sit better on the edge of your ruffle, on the top edge of your ruffle, once it covers it. And that's kind of the best way that I thought that we can make the tip. And also can give you enough space to put a bead at the top. This method is usually very thick at the top, and if I put a bead at the top, it's just going to be a little too much. So you have two options here. This is what it looks like when it's finished. See how it's slim. I didn't have enough ruffles on my previous layer to make the top part chunky, so I did this method to finish my tree. Thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. I hope you like, share, and subscribe if you want to stay tuned between caravels, crafting, traveling, and living fully. And don't forget to mention in the comments if you have any questions or if you actually tried these crafts. Thanks again. Bye.